What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with the Sony Open betting preview. So this is going to be a short video just to kind of give you an idea where my head is at on the various types of bets that I will be making, or I think that there's value in for this week. I've already covered a lot of the golfers and plays that I like via the DFS preview and the one and done preview, but this is a way to kind of look more closely at the sports betting prospects of all of this. I do have a tool on DFS On Demand, which is a head-to-head matchup tool that if you've used before, I really enjoy it. I'm currently reworking that and also creating a few more sports betting or golf betting specific tools. So you'll see those over the course of the next few weeks. But for today, we're just going to go in and kind of talk through some of the value and where I think it's at. So let's jump into it. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run through the outrights very, very quickly before we get to like top 5, top 10, any of that stuff, because quite frankly, with like the DFS video and the one and done and all that, like you should generally know who I like. The main thing about these outrights is I'm trying to find guys with legitimate win equity. Okay, for DFS purposes, you can go down and you can bet Brian Stewart at 150 to 1, which I think Brian Stewart is very undervalued this week. I don't think he has any win equity whatsoever. So like that's the big difference here when we're talking outrights versus the rest of this stuff. So just to kind of put a line in the sand, in terms of outrights, like the places that I think that there's value and where I'm landing here is, no offense to JT, I just don't usually get to the 5 to 1 number. I think it's a little bit too short for me. I would prefer to bet multiple guys kind of in the second tier as opposed to betting JT and then having to jump down into like the 40s and 50s immediately. So like I'm kind of drawing a line at Morikawa. I think is pretty undervalued. The fact that he's got win equity, elite ball striker, not going to kill you off the tee. He's short, which Wailea is a very short course. So like I'm kind of starting there. Then I actually already got Neiman. I got Neiman at 33 to 1. He's down to 25 to 1 at the moment. Same thing I said in the DFS video this week, which is very much like this guy's now turning into the player that we think he is, or that we thought he was, a couple of years ago when he first made his debut, gaining on approaches in 12 straight, gaining off the tee in 12 of 13. And again, it's all about the win equity. It's all about that green, he won at the Greenbrier to start the year. Neiman to me is one of the riskier bets that you're going to take. Like I think Morikawa, much more of a solid player. You would expect that he's going to finish, say, top 5 much more often than Neiman is, but Neiman might win more often. Like the results for Joaquin Neiman are going to be all over the place with the way that his swing is kind of set up and how young he is. Then I kind of I think the popular bets here are Corey Connors at 40, Kevin Kisner at 40. I think those are okay. I really like Connors. I play him in my DraftKings lineup almost every single week. I really like him. 40's fine here. I'm not like running to the window to get it. I did also already bet Sebastian Munoz at 66. So again, we're starting to get to the point where we're out of win equity, right? Like when you start getting into the hundreds to ones, like yeah, that they hit, but very, very rarely. I'm trying to think how many we had last year. Like Lashley won. He was. I don't even know if Lashley was available because he was an alternate late. I don't know what Corey Connors' number would have been when he Monday qualified at Valero. Might have been longer than 100 to 1. Max Homa was probably. So like four times a year you might get one of these guys that hits, but very, very rare. So Munoz has already won this year at the Sanderson Farms. Again, I think I mentioned this in the DFS video. Munoz needs one thing to go right, which is his irons. So let me see if I can pull this up really quick. Yeah, so if you're watching on the video version of this, I'm showing you the strokes gain database for Sebastian Munoz right now. And you can see he's very solid around the greens. Around and on the greens, he's great. Off the tee, he's fine. But the thing that's all over the place is his irons. And what I like about this is, okay, so there are times in betting and there are times in fantasy where you should actually be embracing volatility, but it comes in different forms. So like a guy who can sit, like, okay, I don't love playing guys that 1 week he's awesome at his irons, and then he's terrible. And then the next week his driver's all over the place, and then the next week he can't putt, and he's a mess all the time and all over the place. But he kind of can get some decent results one way or another. Like that's not good volatility. I do think Munoz is good volatility, where in 3 of the 4 stat categories he's really just fine. And then in the approaches, which is kind of his most volatile aspect of this, and probably the worst part of his game, he can gain 5 strokes in a single tournament, or he can lose 5 strokes in a single tournament, or he can gain 3 or lose 3. At least he's doing it in big numbers. I would hate it if he was just like gaining 1, losing 1, gaining 1.5, losing 1.5. Like that's not that exciting, because what it shows me is Munoz has legitimate upside. He has legitimate downside too, but he is volatile in a good way, where if you just catch, so like 3 of the 4 aspects of his game are going to be fine. If you catch him on the hot week, he's very much able to win like he did at Sanderson Farms. So this to me is an opportunity to actually embrace good volatility, and I think Munoz is certainly that for this week. But that's really where I drew the line for bets, or for outright bets, and then I'll show you where I kind of went on some of these other more exotic type plays. For top 5 bets, I did make one on Joaquin Niemann, so kind of like making my own little each way, right? Or I have him at 33 to 1, and I got him at 7 to 1 in the top 5 market, which to me, he just looks like the guy that didn't change enough. So if you compare the top 5 odds to the outright odds, for example, Charles Howell went from 40 to 1 to 8 to 1. Same thing with Corey Connors, 40 to 1 to 8 to 1. Sung Jae went from 20 to 1 to 5 to 1. But Niemann, who was 25 to 1, is still sitting there at 7 to 1, which is like that number should probably be shorter for him. Now, I guess the argument is the something fell behind me. The argument is the volatility that Niemann has. Like I mentioned, like he's going to be all over the place. So maybe they're cooking a little bit of that in, but it was a little too juicy to pass up for me. Now, this is the market, though, where I'm going to start to consider someone like a Brian Stewart at 12 to 1 in the top 5 market, because he's got, 4 top 10s in his last 6 starts here at the Sony. Historically, he's one of the better strokes gained players around here. I really like his game. This is like the Brian Stewart Open, quite frankly. So 12 to 1 for him to finish top 5, I think is a pretty good number. And we can compare that to some of the other like course horse guys, which I'd probably like. Zach Blair is on my short list, and Brian Gay is on my short list, but I actually liked those guys a little bit better in the top 10 market. So Zach Blair now becomes 12 to 1 to top 10 this event, and Brian Gay becomes 7.5 to 1 to top 10 this event. Those are, to me, much better situations. And then there is another one that stands out. Lonto Griffin at 7 to 1 to top 10 this. The guy's been racking up top 20s every single start since the season started. Basically, it feels like he has the win. This is not a very deep field. There's some names at the top, but it doesn't stay that way for very long. So I still think he is on the upper end, or the upper echelon of these types of golfers. So and he played last week, which I know is a good thing and usually turns itself into success. So those are the types of golfers that I am targeting here. And then the top 20 market, I don't usually get too much into this. If I was, I'd be going pretty deep. Like where's my guy? Will Gordon. I think we saw him with a top 10 at RSM, I believe, the last time we saw him. He's like $6,100 on DraftKings. He's nearly min priced. 12 to 1 here. Again, like the reason it's interesting is because he is next to guys that literally have like no chance of top 10ing this event. Like VJ Singh is 14 to 1. Bo Van Pelt is 16 to 1. Like these guys, Martin Trainer, he's actually 28 to 1 to finish top 20. which is crazy because he played last week at the Tournament of Champions and he played so poorly. But like just amongst his peers, these guys legit have like no chance of top 10ing, top 20ing this. But Will Gordon does. We just saw it from the last time he played. So I did go with Will Gordon. For first round leader, I'll actually show you this little tools that I made. So again, if you're watching on the video, I'm showing the showdown tool that's on the showdown cheat sheet that's on DFS on demand. And quite frankly, this isn't the final version of this cheat sheet. This is kind of just one part of it that I've been working on, but I think it works really well for first round leader, where it shows you, you know, all of the, you know, average strokes gained for every golfer in the field, but then it breaks it down by round, and then you can compare each round to that golfer's baseline. So you can say who is better in round one than other rounds, which is kind of an interesting little way to look at it. And now some of these guys have very, very small sample sizes, so you can see like round one, like I would ignore that. But the guys who have, it's hilarious. The guys who have some sample size, Graham McDowell, I have 13 measured first rounds for him, and he's averaging 1.8 strokes gained in those rounds, which is 1.5 times better, or I'm sorry, 1.5 strokes better than his baseline. So he plays significantly better in round one than he does like as a aggregate of his game. Keegan, of course, is on this list, like, right? He's always a first round leader bet, and it's kind of hilarious to see the stats really bear it out. Now, he goes and, you know, goes full Keegan and misses the cut after he's the first round leader, but he is a great first round leader play. And then Matt Kuchar, 1.2 strokes better in the first round than than his baseline. So those are the guys with the biggest sample. Ches Reavie is always one of these guys. He's like fourth on this list for guys that have samples. What I like about Reavie is I also believe he's a big early guy. If you can get him early in the first round, he's like the best early player on tour, and he's like one of the best first round players on tour. So if he goes AM PM, he's almost always jumping out with a really fast start, which is kind of funny. Might just be a morning person. So when you go back and look at the odds on those guys, so let's go first round leader, and we'll look for some of these names that we were just talking about. So here's Ches, first round leader, 50-1. I don't know what his tee time is. Let me see if it's out yet. All right, I might just be like an hour or two early. The tee times are not out yet, but Reavie at a place where you don't have to be long, on a Thursday where he's awesome. If it comes out that he's playing early, I'm probably gonna hit that number pretty hard at 50-1. That's a pretty good number. Who else did we see? We saw Keegan, who's 80-1 first round leader. Who else? Kuchar, he'll be much shorter, 33-1, which is usually too short. I don't love to get into that because anything can happen in one single round. I like to be much deeper. So that was Kuchar. Who else did we see? Oh, Graham McDowell was the last guy I wanted to find. He's probably pretty long. Yeah, 100-1. So those are where I'll probably focus my first round leader bets because historically those guys tend to play pretty well in the first round. All right. We'll put a pin in it there. This is really just a teaser because I want to expand on this for the upcoming season. I'm in the process of creating some tools to help identify top 5, top 10, top 20 bets, first round leader bets as we're looking at right now. And then I also want to do something for group betting. So group betting is something that I think there's a real edge in. So I want to talk more about that in future weeks. So let me know what you think. Any bets that you specifically might be looking to make this week, tweet me. It's at RickRunGood. Best of luck this week. I'll talk to you soon.